Okay, so I think I have to start that again. Sorry for those in Zoom. But yeah, welcome. So I feel very inspired to talk about the title today. So many teachers are quitting non-duality. Should I? So you if you watch a lot of non-duality on YouTube, you might have noticed there's a lots of teachers recently saying why I quitted non-duality, or why I'm quitting speaking about non-duality, why I don't speak about non-duality anymore. Yeah, and I feel like non-duality is becoming a bit of the dirt word in spirituality. I could be wrong. It's only from my observation of the YouTube algorithms, and maybe everybody else gets really different algorithms to me. Um, but yeah, there's a perception of negativity towards non-duality, and I feel like it's been building for quite some years now. Like this idea that non-duality is spiritually bypassing. Um, Yeah, and I think that you all know how passionate I am about speaking and teaching, if that is such a thing, if you can teach non-duality, but speaking about non-duality. Like, to me, it saved my life. It radically changed my life. Um, and I feel internally, eternally, not internally, eternally grateful for that. Like, it really radically changed my life in an instant. Even though there was a build up to it, the last bit was an instant. And yeah, I've said many times in videos before that I feel like my life would have been quite difficult if I hadn't got into this subject. But I understand why it's getting such a bad rep for many reasons. Um, Firstly, because I mean, it's kind of saying that if you are in the present moment and not going off into thoughts and not going off into ideas of yourself, then there is no problem. And that is fundamentally offensive to the human race and to even a lot of spiritual traditions or teachers, because it's denying the existence of the thought realm being real in any way, and the person being real, and that the person can or will become enlightened. I can understand why that creates problems, because um, if it's not really understood and it's not really this energetic movement into what Nisargadatta would call the witnessing mode, the supreme witnessing mode. I'm not exactly sure how he would phrase it, but something like that. Or what I would call like this expansion or the empty looking. If there's not the movement to that, and non-duality is taken mentally, then I can see why it can be considered dangerous or problematic. Like, yeah, because some people might be using it as a story to tell themselves and a way to deny feelings and emotions by telling themselves there's nobody here and trying their best to put their attention in the present moment. Some people might even name or categorize that as depersonalization. Um, Whereas I don't really feel it's like that, and it wasn't like that for me. Maybe there was a period of it being like that for me, but there was a going past that. Um, yeah. So a lot of teachers now feel the appropriate thing to do is to teach therapy and non-duality simultaneously. And I think that that's brilliant. That's great to teach non-duality therapy and self-improvement, all different types of techniques to help the person and speak about non-duality. I'm not against that in any way. However, I feel like if all teachers do that, then the beauty and the magic of just talking about non-duality will be lost, because I feel what happens when you just stay close to speaking about non-duality, maybe there's a bit of movement onto the personal realm. It's like inevitable when you do question answers. If you just stay there, then what's missed is this, I mean, what they would traditionally call transmission, but I'm always reluctant to use those types of words, because who would be transmitting to who? So if there is a sticking to non-duality, I feel like it's like this deep meditation that can happen in the talks, but it's not appropriate for everyone. And I really understand it's never going to be popular. Yeah, I've been doing this 12 years now, and I've watched many teachers become popular, and it's very rare that they're just speaking pure sort of more about non-duality. They're normally mixing with other things, because yeah, it's not very popular to just speak about it. You learn the concepts really quickly. So, you know, in maybe under a year, you're like, okay, I'm done. I've learned everything Lisa's got to say, or I learned everything Nisargadatta. I've done. I mastered it. And then the mind thinks that's what it is. But that's actually not the beauty of having satsang and speaking about non-duality. The beauty is the energetic resonance that can happen, that's beyond the mind, that's beyond intellectual knowing, that's much, much deeper. It's the calling into the witnessing consciousness. I think this is what Maharaj would call it. I'm so affected by him at the moment because I do his book in the book clubs, and yeah. But I would have called it to beingness, or the empty looking, or impersonal I amness. It doesn't really matter. And you'll see teachers of non-duality change their wording, which I can imagine also frustrates the listener, because you're like, oh, I've just got it, and now they're changing it, or they're being inauthentic. But it's because there is no way to speak about this subject. There's no one way. Obviously, there is limits, like you can't just talk about eating a packet of crisps. But it's predominantly about this energetic resonance that happens. And you'll have energetic resonance with different teachers, you know, nothing personal. There'll be some teachers that affect you in that way and some teachers that don't. And I feel like, you know, the teachers that are quitting non-duality or stopping talking about it, there isn't the appreciation of this and the power of this. Like, you know, it's not spoken about enough. Maybe it's spoken about more in India, where it's like these transmissions or meeting in truth is more appreciated. I don't know, maybe it's going out of fashion there. Yes, that's one reason why I feel like non-duality is becoming unpopular, is because people think it is something that you understand, and so they kind of listen for a year and then think they've got it. And that's not what these talks are about. I've been repeating the same thing for 12 years. I've not got anything new to teach you. It's just us meeting in this space of silence every week. What beauty. And it's nobody's silence. It's not mine or your silence. It's the one silence. Just God is animating this body to be the speaker. So that is that. And all the appreciation, the bypassing, that can happen. And I understand that as well. So with the bypassing, a lot of people feel that, just pointing to the present moment is a bypassing of emotions. And it's not really meant to be a bypassing of emotions, although I can understand that that can happen. And if that happens, that can seemingly be damaging for somebody. But it's actually meant to be a real embracing of emotions. I feel like it's a really misunderstood area, because if there is real presence, then there is nothing to avoid. So if there's emotions here or feelings here, then they're kind of really experienced. They're not sort of pushed away. It's not someone trying to push them away. But I can understand why that opinion occurs, and I'm sure all of you listening know there's been periods in your spiritual search where you've been spiritually bypassing. I think another reason why non-duality is getting a bad name, or has got a bad name, is because of seemingly immoral actions of the teacher. So if you give one teacher so much power, then the immoral actions that take place. So if all the students believe that I am God speaking, or if they believe, that other teachers are God speaking, then it gives that teacher an incredible amount of power. And with power comes danger. Yes, and I've learned that the hard way, when I first started speaking, I have to confess, I didn't understand the power that I had over people that came to the talks. It wasn't on my radar. I wasn't looking for power. What happens to me when I speak about non-duality is I become incredibly blissed out, often, not all the time, but most of the time I become very blissed out. And my teacher, Roger Castillo, is one of his main teachings is, in every given moment, do exactly what you feel like doing, knowing there's no doer doing anything. So because there's such conditioning here, this body navigates itself, not all the time, it's not always possible to navigate itself towards joy or freedom, but it's looking for that. And in the expression of non-duality, it's incredibly blissful, not actually joyful. That can come and go, blissful. It's like bliss. So it's like following the bliss. So that's why there is remained a speaking about it, because it's very blissful to do it, and that feels like the right way to navigate. Like the body is looking and following that. It feels like God's will. It feels like I'm not in the way, the character or the old seeking energies or old karmas aren't getting in the way. It feels like the right thing to do. And so that's why I continue to talk about non-duality week after week after week after week, the year after year after year, because that feels right. Body moves towards that. However, I had no perception really, which is really very ignorant, that I was very young when I started speaking, that contained such power over people, because to me, I wasn't looking at it through power or not power, or that the other people giving me power or having less power than me. They may have been doing that, but I wasn't looking at that. I was looking at the emptiness and the stillness and the resonance. Yeah, and so in the beginning there was accidental misuse of power here, I would say. But in the end, that is God's will. And also that hurt me as well. Like I often not put myself down, but don't stand up for myself in certain situations. But that also damaged me, not realizing the power I held over people, because I also, didn't realize that when you're seemingly having power, other people want to get that power or have some of that power. So I didn't, so also made me a little bit of a unknowing sitting duck, like whack whack, bobbing along on the surface, like whack whack, here I am. Yeah. Yeah. So it's always two-way in a way, in the one-way system of things. Like it was through my ignorance, there was a damaging of people, but then also damaging of this body-mind mechanism as well. But it really can't damage things, because when we look at it in the correct light, even though I've described it as that, because that's how to communicate, but in the correct way of seeing things, that was life eradicating any false beliefs or ideas that were left in this body, or any karmas left in this body, and energetically opening up more and more. Everything that happens is always that. It's always expanding us. Yes, there's that. And so because of this misuse of power of teachers, this cults that are formed, this has also damaged non-duality as well. Yeah, and we all know why that is. Yeah, and we all know what happens there. And then another thing that makes non-duality not popular is it's weird for outsiders to come into. They're like, why is this woman or man or non-binary person opening themselves up to questions and sort of putting themselves as if they know something that other people don't? So if you come into non-duality, it's such a weird thing. This person sitting at the front talking about absolute reality. It's like, why does that person know? Who do they think they are? And it's a weird thing. Luckily for me, I found it weird when I first came across it, but also fascinating. And my first satsang was John de Ruyter, and he didn't say a thing the whole satsang, just was looking in people's eyes, giving them the non-dual eyes. I suppose it's darshan in India. And I was already doing the Buddhist stuff, so there was some understanding of something. But I was just like, what the hell? There's like hundreds of people here, all sitting silently, watching a man stare into somebody's eyes for hours on end, for a whole day. What is that? Luckily, I kept going back. But these are all reasons why non-duality in 2024 is becoming super unpopular. It's I think seen as dogmatic, old school, boring. We know all the information out there. And then the sadness is this meditation which happens, this meeting in truth, is not appreciated for what it is. Yeah. So So just then I went to say something, and then there was a stopping. And that's because I'm trying to follow the energy. And then I went to speak, and then I could feel the energy needed a moment of silence. That sounds so weird. I mean, this is why people don't come to non-duality, but it's it's like it's not even me doing it, it's just the energy is trying to follow the right energy. That sounds so crazy. Yeah. Should I quit non-duality? That is the question. And in the end, it's God's will whether quitting happens or not. But I suspect it's unlikely because it's just repetitively year after year. It's it's so blissful doing it. Yeah, speaking about non-duality with others that are open to it is incredibly blissful. It's not blissful doing it to people that aren't open to it because I see it as this like two-way thing. It's like a love affair that's happening, but it's like one energy's love affair. So if the other is open to it, then this like, energy circulates. But if the other isn't open to it, then it's totally not interesting to speak. What interests me about this energy and um, yeah, this is going a bit off course, but it feels to speak about it, is what interests me about this energy. So what it feels like here is that like, there is presence, there is a live presence, there is this empty looking, which is no thing and everything. And that empty presence, like it gives like a feeling of aliveness, of love. And what it wants is for action, behavior speaking, to be in line with it. That sounds really weird. And I think it's what people call, like being in flow in other spiritual traditions or other teachers. It's not named so much as like that in Duality. And like Ananda Mahima, I think she would say like God speaking. It's like God wants to speak through the instruments. And for this body, when it's in line with it, and it feels very blissful. This body is not always in line with it. Like this body is still expanding and adapting and changing to this realization. And it's hard living in a society that really doesn't understand this. Yeah. But what it wants is to follow that energy, like to follow the bliss. And that is really scary. Like this character sometimes gets afraid as well because it's not necessarily logical. It can have logic in it, can come up through logic. Yeah. In the end, everything is God's will, even when it doesn't feel like God's will. And that's what has to penetrate the thinking mind more and more to relax the system. But ultimately, I feel like the goal is to be as in line with God as you can be, as surrendered to God's will as you can be. And what's interesting is maybe a lot of people that are here know this from childhood. Like this was always my mission, even in childhood, but I didn't really know it. And maybe a lot of people can resonate with that. I think there's a lot of artists and creative people and sensitive people that my goal, even as an artist, was to, like when I was younger, I used to act. And when I acted, and I don't know where I got this from, but this is why I loved acting, was that when I did it, I had to totally follow the moment. So I would learn the words of the character. And then when I went to perform it, there was no thinking allowed. It had to come out spontaneously. And I was so strict on that. And I think that other people maybe weren't all doing the same, but that was my philosophy, was I had to do that. And I think some teachers suggest that there's like the method and the Stanislavski, the method and Alexander techniques. So there's all these different techniques that suggest it in acting, but this was really important to me. And I don't know why. I didn't know why. I didn't even think about it or question it. And I didn't realize that other people might not be doing the same, that they might be thinking or constructing things. And I remember this one play that I was in, where I was the main character. It was in Clockwork Orange, and the main character's a man, but I was cast as an androgynous character. At that time, I had like really short hair, and when I don't wear makeup, I can look very boy-like, or used to when I was younger. And yeah, I was cast, and it was really complex because this body, sorry, Lisa I had to do lots of speaking, and also some of the other actors weren't that great. It was like at college, and so what I did was I learned every role off by heart. So it was automatic. So I knew the whole play from beginning to end, like every word in it. And then I learned everybody's movements in it. So it was done in the round. and I learned everybody's movements, um, because I realized that I couldn't rely on the others to not get it wrong. So I had to know everything. Because it was in the round and I was always on stage. It was like I was always in every scene. If you ever read the play, it was really intense and it was really physical theatre as well, the way the director directed it. And um, and then when I did it, I wasn't allowed to think. I only allowed to do it on automatic. It's like I taught my body how to do it, and then in the moment it was only allowed to come out spontaneously, and we could call that automatic, but it's like this spontaneity. It's like I was only allowed to be really present, and then it to come out of nowhere. And we call that automatically, like a guitarist is playing the guitar, for many years, learned it, and then just spontaneously plays. That's it's kind of like we call it automatic or something, but it's like spontaneity in a way. It's coming from nowhere. And and it felt like love when I did it. This is why I was so in love with the subject. And it's because these had totally vanished and there was just presence expressing itself. And this was all I was really interested in acting, and everything that I ever did in my life, it was about recreating that. I even remember at university writing an essay spontaneously about how essays and every piece of art should only be done spontaneously. I see the problem with it now. Like I needed to learn better how to write a essay before I spontaneously did it. But I understand now the premise of what I was coming from and this energy. And it's the same with writing, this spontaneity and this importance of spontaneity. But I understand now that body can learn things and that's spontaneous, and then it creates spontaneously. But what I'm trying to describe is this speaking from no place. Not speaking from a derived place, from a thought-based place, where you're once removed in your imagination, you're kind of imagining yourself speaking. You've got a character and a form in which you want to present in a certain way. It's just coming out. And in that coming out, it might be that the character is presenting in a certain way, but it's nobody presenting in a certain way. It's a happening. Like our bodies all know how to eat. If we'd never not done this action with our fork and with our spoon many times, we'd have to practice doing it. But our bodies have done it so many times that they can just be allowing that to happen and an immense presence to it. There doesn't need to be any second. Yeah, and I know there can be contradictions to that because there can be immense presence in practicing eating. But I'm just trying to describe that. And when you become really present to it, like the body wants to move in certain ways, wants to do things and say things in certain ways. And that can seem super mad to another person and super unethical or unlogical, but it's actually coming from love. And this is where non-duality gets the bad name, because people who aren't coming from presence or love and use it as an excuse. Yes. Okay. Yes, if you have any questions or comments, you can write them in Telegram. If you don't know how to join the Telegram group, it's in the box below, or maybe it's in the box below, I think. Or you can, in Telegram, I posted a Zoom link and you can put your hand up in Zoom. Your video name won't be shown on the video, it'll just be your voice. For me, if a non-duality teacher is not transmitting, sorry, I lost the thing. Transmitting grace, then the message, no matter how intellectually sound, will never resonate. My teacher speaks of two awakenings, the dry non-dual and the wet Kundalini Shakti. I wonder if non-duality is too devoid of the devotional side of practice, which helps to soften the heart and open the devotee to the energetic side of awakening. Even the great Yanis, Nisargadatta and Ramana, would have elaborated pujas and devotional chanting at the ashram. Yeah, nice. I think a lot of Westerners don't understand the devotional side that can happen in India. I think it's very challenging to our sensibilities in the West. Um, um, and so maybe that sometimes gives the wrong impression in non-duality, that it's just a emptiness awakening. It's not the love side. So to me, there can be two different types of awakening. There can be the emptiness, and then there can be the love awakening, and they can happen independently of each other, or they can happen simultaneously. The emptiness is the empty looking. There is nothing here looking. I think Nisargadatta would call it the witnessing. And then there can be the love side, which is the beingness coming forward. And when those two are united, so the witness and the beingness are united, and it's not just witnessing, but it's the witnessing. He would call it the supreme witnessing, but the witnessing and the being simultaneously. It's absolute love and emptiness, and they're one and the same thing. So you could call it like the impersonal I am and the empty looking coming together. And the witness is like a bridge between the no thing, which is the emptiness, and then the love, which is everything. And this is who we are right now, everybody. Is this empty looking, and then this love, this beingness, this everything. And they come together. So the empty looking, or what he would call the supreme witnessing, is not a witness that's from a subject or a place. It's no place. It's in no place, and it's all things. So there's not something witnessing something else. That's the activity that happens beforehand. The witnessing, the consciousness is in all things. So there is nothing conscious, there's nothing witnessing. And then all things are kind of, you could say, beingness. And they come together, and then it's this empty fullness, which is love. And everybody is that. Everybody is the empty looking. What creates suffering is the identification with the person and the identification with time-bound reality, that I am something, that I am a body, mind, that I'm emotions. And from that comes personal doership, the idea that there is somebody doing inside this body or that body, and it's against life, rather than from the perspective of non-duality, of noting everything. Everything is a reflection of itself. All is a reflection of itself. Yeah, I read this from Ananda Mahima. This is so beautiful. I think I've read it before, but let me just read it again. She's so divine, and so few people seem to know about her. Shrima. When someone disapproves of something we have done, God appears in the form of that disapproval, as if in that disapproval it is that God, ultimate reality, who is manifested. If someone talks in our favor, that appears in the form of that compliment. If someone expresses doubt about us or talks in the language of contradictions, there also is that, meaning God, only. There is nothing anywhere but our own self. Everywhere it is that self alone, God alone. It is only Bhagwan, God, the Lord, in every form. He can appear in the form of either approval or disapproval. The question says, how do we secure bhakti, devotion? Go and sit under a tree. She means go to satsang. That's what she means by that. She has everything and gives what is suitable to a person according to his own lineage. That great godly person will give you what you need. Yeah. And what I get the sense when she means like go and sit under the tree, she calls it like go and sit with a great one. She means like go and sit in presence. Like she does also mean go to satsang, like that's her lineage, so that's what she's going to teach. So go to a teacher, but she means also that which is a mirror to your own nature. That is what's reflecting your own nature. And that's not including, going to therapy or working on the personal self. Although I totally recommend doing that, and I think it's really wise. What she's suggesting is sitting in presence, is being in devotion to God. She calls it different things. Yeah. I think in the West, though, I think in India, it's the same, but, working on the person, doing yoga, doing therapy, having a good conceptual understanding of the self is important to calm the person down. But then at the same time, you need to have this strict commitment to going beyond all of that. This really is going beyond the person. What is it in which the person appears in? Yes, it's great to do all these things for the person and to work out the person. But the most important part, all your path, is to see beyond the person. Where is this beingness and this alive presence? Who is that? Where is that? In every moment, basking in that. In every experience, there is this empty looking, alive presence. It's right here. what the person can do is it can do very simple things, but keeping in mind that it's not really the person that gets there. And the simple practices is putting your attention in beingness, in presence, in I am, or in the empty looking. Ma, Ananda Mahi Ma would recommend mantras, or focusing on the name of God. Basically, what it's doing is it's moving the attention out of the conceptual reality and trying to point it to something deeper. And that's different from therapy, from thinking about yourself, from energetic release. Although I'm not saying it's better, it's just different. That is all working on the person. And in a way, this is calming the person. But it's trying to point to something different. It's trying to invoke a stillness that is the nature. But in saying all of that, just holding in mind that everything that you do with an idea of you is in ideas. So moving your attention back to the present moment is an idea pulling itself out of ideas. Just recognizing that. Beingness, what you truly are, is always still, always present. It's not a movement. It's not something you get. It's here right now. It is you as you. No more questions. Done. Hello.
Hello.
Oh, hello.
Hi, hi. Yeah, I felt like sharing a bit because this topic is interesting and for me it was because I also heard a lot of teachers and um, what I always liked about your way of teaching or that way of teaching which is coming through you that you also always point out, like you give some advice on your homepage and people can look if they look for something like on that level. But the pointing is really just like from that sort of loving way. it's yeah, and for me it was really, it's just really helpful, and it's, yeah, changing my life on different levels, and yeah. But I also can very good understand that for some people, if it is a little bit out of the context, yeah, that it can be a little bit confusing or something. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, I think out of context, it's really confusing, but it also really interests me, like, non-duality speakers that are dumping it now, after many of years, or sort of
Mm,
like, because I just feel like it's really profound.
mm,
Um, yeah, and really important to keep focusing on it. Like yeah, I don't think it's bad that they're dumping it, and then maybe there'll be like a new emergence, it will come
mm,
in a different way, speakers will come under a different title, or there'll be something else that happens. But it interests me that it's yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, being sort of brushed off as a nothing, where it's such a
mm,
beautiful tradition that's gone on for thousands of years, and it's yeah, to me incredibly powerful. When I went to teachers, that
mm.
was what I was interested in, was the sitting in resonance, and I was interested in understanding as well, but it was more the resonance part that was important.
Yeah, what for me it would be interesting to know if they just say, okay, we don't want to do it on that in the way that it's available to everybody, like the digital way, or like if they just want to see that people find a different way to them, or if they just say, it feels like that kind of sharing, it's not handled well or whatever. And
Mm.
so
Yeah, it could be
because
that they only will talk about it intimately with smaller groups, after
mm,
people have done lots of therapeutic work on themselves.
yeah, yeah, I can really understand that, because yeah, of different reasons. But yeah, with I think with you, I still have that feeling that there's enough considering, like what is important for the person to understand, like apart from letting go into that experience, or that beingness, like that entering into that realm somehow.
Mm.
And yeah, but
Yeah.
it might be that it's just some movements, because I always sometimes I compare like what is globally or collectively happening to what is happening to myself, like um individually, and then I see, okay, there are sometimes I reach some limitations for me to integrate, and then, or sometimes there it feels like a threatening or some anxiety or whatever. So that can also be on the collective level
Mm.
in a way, and yeah,
Yeah, totally.
yeah. So yeah, maybe that is a little bit trying to go around it. But I think, or I feel it's the same little bit like being a light tower, yeah. And you have the ships out somewhere, but so if you just, yeah, keep showing the light, there is a little bit of orientation, and that is maybe
Mm.
a good way, instead of saying, yeah, I have the understanding and I'm gonna teach you how to maneuver your ship or whatever, like it's
Mm. Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it, like a lighthouse rather
mm,
than like somebody coming over the thing and being like, do this, go left, go right. It's like just showing the light and then they can choose which way to go. That's a really
Right.
nice way to put it. Yeah, nice
Yeah.
imagination.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's really beautiful, and that's what I feel like non-duality is meant to be, like a lighthouse.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. Like it's just showing, it's just giving the light, and then if that light is followed, it's followed. If not, yeah, and the different ways in which can the light can be approached, the different angles in which it can be
Mhm.
seen.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Well, thank you for your comment.
All right. Yes.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
sharing. Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks.
Thank you. Bye bye.
It's so beautiful, so still and peaceful. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. It's really a collective thing. It's really not me. I just happen to be the one that God orchestrates seemingly at the front, but it's this one energy. Like this one energy moves this hand, the one energy makes those eyes watch this hand be moved. And that's the space, the sounds, the everything in between. It's such love. Yeah, I wonder how many teachers are stepping away because of the lack of mature students. I know sorry. I know I have often thought for myself that I'm not ready to hear non-dual message. It seems to be the end of the road in terms of sadhana. Yeah, it was a really intense message, but such love. Like so for you, like sadhana has to be practiced as long as life, the energy, God, whatever we call it, dictates that. And the mind thinks, I'm not ready for it. But your whole life has always been the movement of that one, all the indecision and decision. And what moves, what changes, is rather than seeing yourself acting in relationship to, there is just the self. Your body is not separate from the environment. It's one and the same thing. The bird flies outside my window, and it's me flying as beingness. The tree waves in the wind, and it's me waving. The clouds, me clouding, but not me as Lisa, me as beingness. And it's that movement from being a time-bound character, from being a thought of me moving in time, which brings a certain energy, to going back to the stillness of what you are in this moment, which is beingness. And the beingness is all places and no place. All places and no place. It's seeing God in every action, every movement. And God is total emptiness and fullness simultaneously. And while the character needs to do sadhana, while the character needs to practice and release seeking, it will do that. But it's actually the divine, the no thing doing that. All of it. The divine speaking, the divine hearing, the divine moving. And it's discovering that witnessing consciousness. It's no thing and all things. That's the bridge to no things and all things. What now isn't moving? What now is perfectly still? What now is not a thing? No thing. This is merely a comment. What you do is great, and maybe some teachers are giving up teaching non-duality. Perhaps that's what they need to do at the personal level. Interesting that the forefront of science is now really into non-duality. Bernardo Kastrup and Don Hoffman are worthy investigation. Rupert Spira has interviewed both. They're nice. Yeah. And it's perfect. If people are giving up non-duality, it's perfect, because who's orchestrating that but the divine? It's just a springboard into conversation about what is happening here. What is happening here is a pointing back to who you are. When you feel absent from it, one thing that can be done is moving the attention back into stillness, into what's happening, into the witness. So the attention moves itself back into the attention, or the sense of I am. And then at some point that gets absorbed into the attention itself. And then there is what Maharaj calls the witnessing consciousness. And then you are no longer a thing. There is no longer a thing looking anymore. But the witnessing consciousness is all things and no things. It's like the bridge between emptiness and fullness. And this is lots of emotional and psychological stuff. Then there's all different types of therapeutic practices, energetic work that can be done. The most important part is this deep falling into the beingness of what you are. For me, the seeming maturing by listening to these pointings helps on all levels of daily life, which is embedded in society. For me, realization of our true self is essential for humanity. Why is the personal self seemingly threatening its own existence by withstanding its transformation? As you say, if it, there can only be the divine answer to it. Yeah, comfortable. Yeah, if anybody else wants to ask a question, it doesn't have to stay on subject. If there's an asking question of non-duality or a different subject matter, you're welcome to express it. Do you think that Western teaching of non-duality has changed in recent years from radical non-duality to a more meeting of the person where they are interactions? I think it's maybe it's like society, like it's gone both ways. Like there's been an emergence of a lot of radical non-duality and an emergence of incorporating non-duality with therapies and with trauma related therapeutic practices. So I think it's gone both ways. I think that there was always this differences in the expression of non-duality, but it seems to be more extreme in the recent years. And I don't think that either are wrong. I think that both camps point the finger and like, that's wrong, that's wrong. I think it's all God's will and it's all perfect. And I don't think one will lead people to awakening more than other people. I just think that they're beautiful in themselves. And I think it's a shame if it was all extreme non-duality and no therapeutic body work. And I think if there was only therapeutic body work and non-duality, that would be a shame. So, yeah. My issue is more that pointing the fingers, this one is bad, this one is bad. I even don't think that the teachers that don't speak with the energetic resonance are bad either. It's all got its place. It's all the God's will in the end. It's just that God now is referring and reverting back. Refuting all these, that non-duality is bad. It's trying to point out, you know, what's good about satsang and the expression of truth and keeping it on direct pointing, and why that's got beauty, and that you don't need to put that down to put up teachings of more body work, therapy, integration. It's all included. And there doesn't need to be a putting down of one or the other. This is better and this is worse. It's incorporating it all. Everything in life is welcome. It's this radical mind that creates suffering. This is the way, this isn't the way. It's really the letting go of all these judgments and extreme thoughts. And sometimes extreme thoughts need to be presented to the teacher, needs to be extreme in order to undermine the student's thoughts or ways of believing or thinking. But it's, in the end, it's letting it all go. And the freedom is all of us seeing each other naked in presence. No better, no worse. Like it's all God speaking. The jackhammer outside your window is as much God as the next thing. And all different messages are seemingly needed at different times. They all got perfection. They all are perfection, and that's the shift that happens. Is everything is God's will. It's the letting go of any hard edges where this is the way it's got to be, that's the way it's got to be. It's moving to the beingness of what you are, and then the character has thoughts and opinions, and then they don't, then it changes. The character being flexible. What's that word? Non-binary, the character being non-binary in all terms, not just in gender. And letting beingness be the guiding light, not the mind. The mind is helpful. The mind is a beautiful tool, but it's when it's the leader of the show, you just get into hell. When it's leading this ship, that it's it's like hellish. Like because it just takes over and then it just starts finding problems in everything. There's a problem in me, there's a problem in them, there's a problem in this, a problem in that. It gets more and more tight the more that the thought leads. Thought is an instrument, it's not the doer, it's not you. What you are is the pure beingness. And thought is great in its context. In its context to be helpful for survival. It is great in its context for undoing thoughts, for letting go of thoughts, for evolving thoughts. But then it's not who you are. It's not the doer of action. The doer of action is beingness, which is what all is. And it's a movement from being this thought-bound person that feels like it's looking from behind the eyes to the pure beingness, which is here. And then the character, in a way, becomes more itself because it's not restrained by ideas. It's not in a tight jacket of who it needs to be. And then this frees up the people around you as well. But all of it is God's doing as that life force, as beingness. All of it. Dear Lisa, thank you for sharing this beacon of shining light and being such an incredibly beautiful tree that some of us have grace to sit nearby. Ah, that's sweet. The new setup is marvelous, by the way. Yeah, thanks. Um, yeah, it's really lovely, the board, this painting. A good teacher always has to be receptive to their students' ability to understand, but that doesn't change the truth of their teaching. That is presuming their teaching is authentic and not a facade. Thank you, dear Lisa, for everything, every goddamn thing. Oh. Thank you for the beautiful satsang today. One of the radical non-dual teachers I have listened to says that the bliss that we experience in satsang or retreats is never lasting. That teacher says it's kind of artificial creation that always has the disappointing coming down to earth on the other side. He says in essence it can be like alcohol. In essence, an escape into bliss that invites frustration afterwards. Another way for the illusory me to seek fulfillment and will never find the true rest or true fulfillment in it. Because so the teaching, true rest can just be found in dropping the me entirely. Please comment. Oh yeah, thank you for the question and such accurate reflections of another teacher. Yeah, heard them say that type of thing too. Yeah, bliss is something that comes and goes. And that's really important to register. Yeah, if there's any holding on to bliss, then it becomes like alcohol or it becomes an addiction. So, but in India, they have the saying Sat Chit Ananda. So when there is a resting in consciousness, in beingness, then that leads to bliss. Um, and Yeah, I think that's a really profound teaching. So bliss is an after effect. And when you're totally identified with the person, there is no bliss, there is no openness, there is no joy. When there's total disidentification with the person, then that's samadhi, that's like an ultimate bliss that you're in. And what I feel happens after this realization and recognition is there is a coming to live in between. So there is a connection to that bliss or that love in every instant, but its intensity grows and disappears dependent, or grows or recedes dependent on the actions. So so actions where there can be uh, total letting go of the character, totally letting go of the world, then there will be immense bliss. And then when there is more things that are needed doing in the world, so more character is needed, then there will be less bliss and there will be an oscillation. And in order for that to happen, there has to be the letting go of the me, or letting go of the attachment to the character in between. And then there is no attachment to the bliss, to whether there's less bliss or more bliss. It's just recognized as an effect that happens. And when there is very little character, there'll be more bliss. And when there is more character, there'll be less bliss. But what breaks is the attachment to the character and then the movement back to what you are as the beingness, which I think he's calling the no me. So the no me is the breaking from being the character to being no character. So it's no longer being time bound, but a movement to the beingness of what is now. So no longer somebody looking, no longer a person looking, but there's no thing looking, which is all things. And then the bliss comes and goes in intensity. Yeah, that's really confusing for the mind. But what there cannot be, like you say, any attachment to the bliss, any wanting for the bliss will be a person, will be a seeking. And bliss is something that comes and goes, just like every other emotion. However, there is an element of it, Sat Chitananda, when there is a breaking of the attachment to the person. That's so complex, though. And I really understand what they're saying. They might think I'm not understanding what they're saying. That's okay too. And I think it's really important, the lack of attachment to it. Like bliss isn't it. What is it is the emptiness and the fullness, the no thing and the everything, the breaking of the attachment to the time-bound character, that you are something that exists in time. Yeah. Hope that makes sense, but please come back with other comments on that, because it's a really complex area. Hi, Lisa. After a shift, is there still judgment, but no resistance at all to what is being experienced anymore? Everything still appears after the shift, except hatred. From this perspective, it could be that it's changing and evolving. So anything that I say about what is or isn't might change through time, because the character is still going through a process where it's expanding more and more to this realization, letting go of old seeking dynamics, letting go of old karmas that arise in the body, which is also the world. So the world, yeah, is also changing in relation to karmas of the body. So what here is said currently that goes is hatred. So there's no sense that anybody, there can be anger, if anger, if somebody ran over the dog, and real sadness or something, especially if they did it on purpose, or even, yeah, if they did it on purpose and there was a seeing of them doing it, there can't be hatred towards that person because there's such a deep knowing that it couldn't be any other way. So there can be anger, there can be sadness, there could even be like crying and saying, why would you do that? But there's a deep knowing that they couldn't be any other way, and that this body can't be any other way. But all is a movement of that one, no separation. But there can be judgment, but other people might not call that judgment. Teachers use different words and they might say discernment or something. So I'm never too picky about words, maybe because of dyslexia, I can't remember, or it's just what comes here. So yeah, like to me, there can be the judgment, if somebody's presenting lots of narcissistic qualities, the mind can come up and make a judgment, or you could say a discernment that the best thing to do is to move away, or the best thing to do is not overshare, or the best thing to do is to put up boundaries. So there could be that judgment. But there's not really, there's not really like the judgment, like gossipy judgment or anything. I'm not interested in that, but that doesn't, yeah. I don't know if that's what you're asking about judgment. There's interest in understanding personalities from a psychological perspective. Any more questions or comments? No more hands up. Maybe there is coming to the end here. Yeah, it's so lovely to share with you all. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Yeah, and I really, 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 really wish you everything. Every goddamn thing. Not one or two or three, but everything. Yeah. Thank you. It's a love.